HydroScience, 10 years ago we entered Vietnam. Primarily we're a consultant. Our first affiliate is HydroScience engineers in Northern America, in California, Silicon Valley area. That's where all the recycled water expertise comes from. So 10 years ago we decided to open up an office in Australia and Ho Chi Minh City at the same time. And Australia started off as a consultant company, as the affiliate, similar to the affiliate in California, and then same with HydroScience in Vietnam. So we wanted to build up another consultant office in Ho Chi Minh City to represent Southeast Asia. And so, I mean, like a consultant, a small consultant starting off, we, at that time, the main works were in the World Bank projects, ADB projects, and what we found was it was a new company. It was obviously a developing country, and there was a lot of consulting works on water and wastewater concept design, planning, especially a lot of planning works. And we found that we were competing with all the large consultant companies who were there for like 10 years before that. Black & Veatch, Royal Haskellings, all the big American and European consultant companies were there, and we didn't have any political connections, any relationships with other partners in Vietnam, and we had a crack with tendering for World Bank projects and ADB projects for probably half a year. There was a lot of projects, but we failed. I mean, we were just too weak, and all the projects were going to all the big American and European firms who had all the establishments there. So we regrouped, but the 6 months of starting up the company there, what we found that Australian engineering and Australian concepts was very well regarded in Vietnam, just as well as Germany, US, and the Japanese. So we're right up on top in terms of perceptions in Vietnam, and we thought about it, and this is going to help us. This is every time we meet a client, they always look high on us, and they expect a high quality product or services from us. So, I mean, I guess that's projects like the Me Too project from AusAid, all the work that's gone from AusAid helped a lot. That's our experience from talking with customers. The first 6 months we talked a lot of private water utilities in Vietnam, and they were all talking about the Me Too bridge that was put in by AusAid as a friendship kind of by the Australian government. So that opened one of the many projects that opened our potential clients' eyes up to the potential of Australian engineering. So the other products, the other high reputable products in Vietnam were like food, health, and raw materials, and they all had good references in Vietnam. So we saw that as an advantage, and and I think to this day it really played out well, and we're still trying to maintain that that quality, the Australian quality. So as Mark and everyone touched base, you feel like you're representing Australia when you're in Vietnam. So the pressure's still there to be a high-end engineering firm. So that's the perception of what the Vietnamese have of Australian, which is all positive. And so we had to change the business model. We couldn't do compete on consulting, because we had a really short time frame to. We're trying to build up a business. We're trying to get cash flow. So the earlier we become profitable, that's the aim. So you're there to do business. So we've changed the business model. A lot of the key team members from HydroScience at that time, including myself, we had construction backgrounds. I used to work with UGL Limited. A few of our other partners worked with other big construction companies in Australia, and obviously we got the specialty consultant background, and we explore the water market in Vietnam in depth, and we found that there's obviously it was a young it's a young industry, like Paul touched base before. There's only a few wastewater treatment plants up and running in Vietnam, and all the industrial wastewater weren't treated. So lots of opportunities, especially for a small-sized company like of ours, to build a design and build company. And so the opportunities were there because there was a lot of opportunities for decentralized systems, especially from industrial parks and residential. So 10 years ago, 10 years ago, I left the country to work in the US, and I went back and forth from the US to Southeast Asia for the last 10 years, really. And then I just recently came back to Melbourne to build up our expertise here. But what I found was Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh City and Melbourne, the last 10 years have pretty much undergone a lot of similarities in terms of infrastructure building. So Vietnam's population, Ho Chi Minh City's population is booming. They're building a lot of residential, same as I guess Melbourne. And but with Melbourne, we've got the water and wastewater infrastructure. Vietnam's building without the water and wastewater infrastructure. So there's a lot of opportunities that we staked out for decentralized systems. And we changed the business model, and then we bid it for small decentralized system, 1,000 cubic meter per day, 2,000 cubic meter per day, and within the first 3-4 months, we won a project, and and it all started from there. And then, like I said, during that time, we had a lot of expertise. Australian water expertise that came off all the waterworks from the droughts, and out of that was all the recycled water and membrane technologies. So we came in and offered a lot of the advanced technologies, which a lot of the clients were expecting us as an Australian engineering services provider to do. And we had competitors from Singapore, Japan, South Korea, and a lot of European companies. They were coming in with the basic solutions, and we decided not to go along that path, providing basic wastewater solutions that's 100 years old into Vietnam. We thought it wasn't right. So what we wanted to do was give what Vietnam, Singapore or Melbourne has in terms of the standard of technology. So we lost a lot of projects because of that, but we try to maintain the ultimate aim was maintaining the high standards of engineering from Australia. In maintaining that high standards, our cost is not always the lowest, but to compete, we invested a lot of time in training Vietnamese engineers from all disciplines: civil, electrical, mechanical. It took a lot of years to do that, but after close to 10 years, we've got a pretty solid team of engineers in Vietnam that can that's up there with all the Australian with all the Australian engineers and all the concepts that we put into a water or wastewater treatment system. So these are just examples. This is a membrane bioreactor system that we've designed in Australia, and this is our typical, wastewater treatment plant, recycled water treatment plant in California, and then that's what we built in Vietnam. So the quality is the same, So we try to maintain that quality, and what we're saying is, if you train your engineers right, it does take time, but the key is, it still has to be controlled from Australia. The Vietnamese cannot build this without our Australian concept engineering and management. So the way that we're running the business now is our Australian office is the project manager and the concept engineering manager and the design manager, and the local office is really an integrator. So it's our only way to deliver a high quality product or service, but keeping the systems affordable so we can compete with the Japanese and the Germans. So the capability is there, is what I'm saying, if you've got a local presence. And the way that we design, all the design concepts are there from Australia. We do HAZOPs, on all our plants. There's no cutting corners on construction safety, especially safety. We try to drive safety like all Australian companies do, and and the Vietnamese expect that, and and it keeps the reputation of all the Australian. It helps everyone on the Australian basis. That's a typical plant. Another typical plant that we've done with our Vietnamese engineers. As you can see, if you take a look at our plant and then a Vietnamese built plant, you can see the quality straight away. So whatever we can build in Australia, you can build in Vietnam. This plant was for GE, so we work well. I have to say we work well with a partner like Aquatech or GE. So if you're an Australian company, you've got a good product or system, I guess we're open to partnerships on integrating your systems locally. So these are examples that we do. So like I said, we put a lot of effort in training civil engineers, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, and to the point where we do our own programming as well, PLC programming, and it's the only way to keep the quality and execute really complex projects. So I'm hoping in Vietnam that HydroScience, after so many years, we're well known to do complex water, wastewater recycle projects, and the Vietnamese, the water industry is young to the point where treating water to the basic level by local companies is even lacking. So we're on top of that. We're looking at water for recycled water. So that's the level of treatment that we're trying to sell in Vietnam. And like Mark said, there is a potential future for it, because water is lacking in Vietnam, even though in central Vietnam it's very dry, so they've got the same issue as in New South Wales, and then in southern Vietnam all the groundwater is contaminated. So that's a high-end RO system that we built for Coca-Cola, and Coca-Cola had all these stringent standards. We find it more stringent than working with the Melbourne Water here. So, the Coca-Cola standards on safety and quality it's almost like building a water treatment plant for the petrochemical industries. So, we're known to do the high-end engineering capability, to have that capability. So, just a summary of our experience in bringing sustainable water solutions to Vietnam. Obviously, I've been prioritising on maintaining the engineering standards, and we feel like we've got the responsibility. If you're claiming that you're an Australian company, it's always you feel like you've got the responsibility to maintain the engineering standards that you do work in Australia overseas, and the same with construction safety and standards as well. And then the other part that's helped us in keeping the system affordable is all the process equipment and all the spare parts. When we first started in the office in Vietnam 10 years ago, we found that companies like pump companies like Grundfos, Flight, they weren't that present in Vietnam. But after 10 years, just about every process equipment that you can find in Australia, they've all got rep offices in Vietnam. So you can source locally from that. And it works both ways. You can get a lot of technical support while you're designing in Australia, and then when the product arrives in Vietnam, they've got a team there as well. So we found that in the last 10 years, everyone's gone in terms of equipment supply, and that's helped keep our systems affordable. The other thing is, as Mark touched base, we had to make some tweaks to all of our systems, but there's a difference between tweaking the system and cutting corners. So we try not to cut corners, but you've got to make changes to your system, because building a system is one thing, but leaving it for the Vietnamese to operate is another thing. So there's a lot of thoughts on gone into HAZOPs and even changing the design to suit the operators in Vietnam and the conditions in Vietnam as well. But that's just part of the fun of engineering. So we had one of the wastewater treatment plants using the membranes from Aquatech. I think a couple of weeks ago, the membranes were just completely blocked with sludge, and we found that the new operations team that they had for it did not waste for like 6 months, but the membranes were intact. It wasn't damaged because we built in a really a fine screens, a high level of fine screens to protect the membranes. We'll almost dummy-proof it. So all of this you've got to take into considerations in Vietnam, and also user-friendly of all your products. And these days, with all the automation and IT and so forth, you can monitor online and everything. So that's what we do to keep things smooth after we hand over. So local integration and technical support. Local technical support took us years to build, but we've gotten out. It's a solid team, so and we're happy to partner up or help with any Australian companies who want to build or bring their products. And the key is affordable but modern water solutions for Vietnam. So.